Hey everybody, some Gadget Guy here with another smartphone comparison, not necessarily a showdown fight for blood, punch, 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 punch. We recently did a comparison between the Galaxy S6 and the Nokia Lumia Icon/930 as being sort of metal and plastic, metal and glass styled phones with non-removable batteries and no upgradable storage, but phones that tackle a premium and fashion-forward design and aesthetic. And as we're waiting to find out what happens with Motorola's next version of the Moto X, especially now that they're working with Lenovo as their main partner, not Google, I thought it would be fitting to take a look back at another sealed up fashion-forward smartphone, the Moto X 2014 edition, or second generation Moto X. Now the Moto X was released September of 2014, September of last year, and it even beats the Galaxy Note in the whole mixed material marketplace by about a month, the whole metal and plasticky leather versus the combination of different materials that we can make a Moto X out of. Samsung's approach to smartphone design now falls in line with the Lumia 930 and what Motorola was doing last year. This combination of metal trim running along the sides of the device and then a nicer material to make the backplate out of. Now Samsung sided with glass to make their phone feel a bit more premium, whereas Motorola has given us the option now to try out a variety of different materials. You can go with a soft touch matte plastic, you can go with wood, and this one I opted for a leather backplate on my Moto X, as I think the combination of this navy blue leather with these little red accents and the white front face, I don't know, when I was going through Moto Maker, I was kind of inspired by the Avengers and doing a little Captain America action when I built out this phone. And while the Moto X starts at 16 gigabytes of built-in storage, it's recommended that you step up to at least 32, as there are no micro SD card expansion slots for either of these phones. What's built into the phone is what you get. That pie's been baked. Motorola's major message on the Moto X is focused on ergonomics. One example we can take a look at is simply screen size. While these two phones have very similar overall footprints, the screen on the Moto X is just a hair larger on the diagonal than the screen on the Galaxy S6, a 5.1-inch display on the Galaxy versus a 5.2-inch display on the Moto. The reason why I'm not straight up focusing on making this a fighting comparison is obviously the newer phone with the newer chipset, the higher resolution screen should probably win most of the battles. Between these two phones specifically, the conversation for me really boils down to one of raw horsepower versus software optimization. The general consensus is the chipset built into the Galaxy S6 is pretty much going to be the most powerful processor in the smartphone marketplace this generation. And when we take a look at the Moto X, we're rocking a Qualcomm 801 series processor, not even the 805. And both of these phones are currently using Android 5.0.2, so we can't claim any kind of software advantage for the Motorola. But we've talked before about how intense the customizations are running into a Galaxy product. Now, general UI performance is decent on the Galaxy, but it doesn't really seem to honor the fact that this is probably the most powerful smartphone on the market today. And going through the smartphone basics, paging through your app drawer and pulling down a notification shade and getting into your settings feels just as snappy, or often snappier, especially when we factor in some of the jank that we can find on Samsung phones when it comes to things like multitasking performance, that this older chipset, this less powerful chipset, is really benefiting from the combination of ultra lean near stock Android software, and it's probably also getting a slight bump from the lower resolution screen. As we discuss more subjective areas of personal preferences, I really am not a huge fan of glass on the back of our phones. I think it makes devices slipperier in sweaty hands, and then also I just worry about how glass-backed devices will age over the life of a 2-year contract. I think it's hysterical when we see torture tests of people raking keys against glass. But if you set your glass-backed phone without a case on a dusty coffee table, you take it out with you to a day at the beach, a little piece of sand, a little piece of grit, a little piece of rock that you can barely see with the naked eye can wreck the back of your phone, scratch it all up. Whereas leathery materials, matte plastic materials, or just legit wood or leather, I think will age cooler over time. But scratches aren't going to be as readily apparent when we start looking at these different types of materials that we can build a phone out of. Now, both of these companies have delivered really sexy devices here. There's no question that these are two very attractive smartphones, but I still need to throw a little criticism at Samsung, as this entire bottom panel on the Galaxy S6 just looks like an iPhone to me. Whereas the Moto X features all of these graceful curves and tapers, while we're mixing materials like metal and leather, it still has a very organic feel, an organic shape. We've seen a number of mixed material phones before from Nokia and Samsung, but Motorola's example here doesn't feel like it's overly inspired by a competitor's product. Though as a branding exercise and as a design element, I'm not sure that I love this divot here in the middle of the Moto X. This leather backplate is just so clean that I wish this were smaller, or maybe that it just wasn't there at all. However, one area where these phones absolutely do not compare in the slightest is in camera performance. The Galaxy S6 borrowing a camera module very similar to what we found on the Note 4, just absolutely stunning photo and video performance, while the Moto X camera definitely feels like a phone of yesteryear, and maybe not even last year yesteryear, but even their buyout by Google didn't really seem to usher in the kind of lifestyle changes that we would want to see when we start comparing content creation tools, things like cameras. The differing approaches to photo and video performance follow us out of the camera hardware and into the camera software for both of these phones too. Samsung's app is incredibly well featured, providing us numerous controls over both photo and video output, exposure, saturation. We've even got a fully featured Pro mode, whereas Motorola's camera app is a far more streamlined affair. As you can see, there's not even a shutter button to interact with, as this is all tap on display to control what it is that you're focusing on and what you're taking pictures of. And the most immediate on-screen control that we get is a little slider that is reminiscent of the exposure slider found on the iPhone 6. And then a little slide in from the side will give us just a little bit more control over things like an HDR mode if we want the flash on, a timer, panorama mode, location settings, if we want the shutter sound on, and then gestures to turn on quick capture. And that's about it. I also have to throw a little love for Motorola for putting its main speaker on the front face of the phone. Now, I wish the Moto X actually had true stereo speakers built into the front face. While this bottom loudspeaker looks a lot like the top earpiece speaker, these two will not work in tandem for things like stereo audio playback. But I think we can all agree that a speaker pointing at your face is a speaker that's pointing in the right direction. I actually have praised speaker playback on the Galaxy S6. I think this is a very high quality smartphone speaker, and it's pointing less in the wrong direction in that it vents out the bottom of the phone as opposed to playing out the back of the phone. But less in the wrong direction is still kind of in the wrong direction. And while I think the audio quality on the Galaxy S6 is slightly higher than that on the Moto X, for alerts, music, movies, and gameplay, I like a front-facing speaker. Another area where Motorola is streamlining the software and using a lower resolution screen than the one found on the Galaxy S6 is in overall battery life. The Motorola X comes at a 10% battery deficit over the Galaxy S6, and in my day-to-day usage, these two perform pretty similarly. It's an interesting trade-off between more performance and better screen on time and better standby time. Unless I start kicking on power saver mode on the Galaxy S6, which for me is destructive to overall UI performance on a phone where even when it's not using power saver, can get janky doing basic multitasking tasks. Now for those lifestyle benefits on the Moto X, there are still a number of things that I really dig about how Samsung has customized Android. It's little things like, for example, how the app drawer performs. We now sort of take it for granted that you're gonna have a whole series of controls up in your app drawer that you can very easily toggle to get to various services and shortcuts on your phone. And a lot of these toggles usually have dual controls built into them. Tap once to turn on Wi-Fi or turn off Wi-Fi, or long press to go to your Wi-Fi settings. Whereas on stock Android, you swipe down and you get your notifications. Then you need to perform another action to pull the notification shade lower so that you can get into your other toggles and controls. And you can tap to turn off Wi-Fi and tap to turn on Wi-Fi. But if you want to go to your Wi-Fi settings, there is no long action. See, nothing's happening, which means you then have to tap again to go into your settings and scroll to wherever your wireless settings are, and then open Wi-Fi from there. For all of Google's attention to making Android prettier, I still think there's a lot of work they need to do to address some of these little minor basic usability gripes. Another Samsung innovation that I've been harping on Google for a while now is this notion of split screening apps. You use it on a Windows tablet, you use it on a Samsung device, you use it on an LG. This is a really cool feature that Google looks to be hopefully potentially maybe addressing with Android M. And you just gotta dig how bold Samsung gets with things like, our heart rate monitor here by the camera lens, and the new and improved fingerprint scanner, which is actually usable now on the Galaxy S6. While those features are really cool on a Samsung, I'm still super stoked to see Motorola innovating more towards lifestyle and how smartphones can better feed us information, better integrate into our daily lives. There's a lot less flash going on, but there are a couple really valuable ergonomic considerations. You might notice these little dots on the front face. I didn't know what those were until I turned the screen off. So there's nothing going on in the front face. You can kind of wave your hand over and you get a glance-like landing page when your screen is off. These pixels, thanks to the OLED display, only turn on when you absolutely need them, kind of helps with battery, but then you can get notifications and alerts to this screen here on your phone. And when a phone call comes in or an alarm goes off, you just wave your hand over the screen to swipe those things away without ever having to handle your device or touch your phone. There was something really interesting happening with Motorola when they were under Google's umbrella, and I really dig the conversations they were having about optimization. They were starting to fall in line with some of the things that I really love about Lumia devices and Windows. That for me is going to be a major component of the next generation, the next place that we want to take mobile data and services, not just smartphones, but the entire personal area network that you're going to be walking around with sensors built into our clothes and smartwatches on our wrists and heads-up displays on our faces and better information being served to our homes and to our cars. The next stage of mobile evolution is going to be getting us away from always having to pick up and handle and stare at a slab of glowing rectangle. So I really hope that's the discussion that Motorola continues, especially as they're partnered with Lenovo. Lenovo's done amazing things with the Windows ecosystem. So I hope Lenovo Moto are able to bring that same kind of magic to the Android ecosystem too. Folks, you know how I don't really like declaring winners in my comparison videos. Smartphones are such a personal product. You know, you really want something that's going to tie into your daily life with the exact features that you care about most against the compromises you're willing to live with. But I absolutely want to hear from you folks. Please drop me some comments down below. When you're looking at lifestyle devices, a phone that can make it through the day, that can get your work done, how do you examine the features built into your device? Are you looking at the raw horsepower? Are you looking at specs on paper? How do you approach topics like optimization, streamlining the experience for a smoother, faster UI? Definitely drop me a comment down below. Those are the conversations I love getting into, not just this one has more megapixels than this one, so it's the winner. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe for more comparisons and videos like these, and I would not be able to continue producing on this channel if you all weren't out there sharing my videos on social sites like Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and the Googles+, so please keep bringing more cool people to the party. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next comparison.